Welcome to Driver's Ed today. So please sign in the comment section and do a text. I'm going to take these headphones off. Okay. For some reason, the big headphones didn't work on this one. Can everybody hear me? There seems to be some confusion on homework. When you take a look at the sheet that I gave you in your folder, off to the right from the date that we're covering will be a chapter from the textbook, and usually reading from the state manual. So the state manual will be in SM. Now, I wasn't able to give you a state manual. So on this sheet of paper, I gave you links. You were to go to the link and download a PDF file for the state manual. So all your reading should be from the PDF file. Now, if we ever do meet for driving, and if I can get into the school, I do have a hard copy that I do have for you, but I just can't get it to you right now. So we're still going to wait just a minute or two. Looks like 11 people are on and ready to go. Today is going to be a very heavy note-taking class. We're going to be zipping and zooming from topic to topic on driving. We have left the beginning portion of Driver's Ed, and now we're getting into the meat of the program, the basis of becoming a safe and good driver. So we're just going to wait. So hopefully everybody's having a good day. I don't know about anybody else, but I hate it when it rains. It just puts you in a funk. So I've been trying to shake that feeling since about 1 o'clock, knowing that we would have to be here for class and to cover this material. And plus I've got a lot of windows around, so when the sun's coming in, I do have lights off to the side. You probably don't know that, but I'm kind of glowing more today because I have the lights on a little bit stronger than normal, just so that it's a better picture, but I'm not going to be in the picture for much longer. At the end of today's session, I am going to send you out some work to do rather than do the chapter test. This is more of a true or false, fill the blank, a little bit more difficult than what I've been giving you for homework. And the homework that you have been given for the most part is really just reading and then a few simple questions just to jog your memory of what you had just read and whether you retained it or not. But what I send you tonight, a lot different. Now, you use your textbook, so feel free to do that, but you're going to find the questions to be just a little bit more involved. So get out some paper and something to write with, and let's get right into what we're going to be covering. There we go. What I want you to write down is vehicle movement and placement. When your parents first took you out to drive, or whoever you drove with for the first time, I would almost imagine that till you get used to the steering, you had a tendency to move the vehicle to the right or to the left, and they would probably holler at you and say, "Move to the right or move to the left. You're going to hit this parked car, or you're going to hit oncoming traffic." And it was probably a little bit difficult to really come up with where is the best place to position my vehicle. So we're going to focus on that here at the beginning of today's session. There are three terms that I want you to write down: pitch, roll, and yaw. Now, the movement of the vehicle is based upon science and physics, and I'm not going to try to make you into a scientist or anything, but I think after today's class, you should have a better understanding of why is my vehicle pulling too much to the right? Why is my vehicle pitching too far in the front? And a lot has to do with the distribution of the weight of the vehicle at the speed that you're going for, the angle of a turn, going up or down a hill with stopping would have the same type of thing with pitch. So we're going to try to kind of simplify these three terms so you have a better idea of what is happening when you're out driving. So the first term, pitch, it's when your vehicle's weight shifts towards the front or backwards. So when you brake coming to a stop sign, and you should try to stop at a stop line, the car is going to dip forward. And that dipping is what we call pitch. Now, you don't want a heavy pitch where the car really pushes down towards the ground, but you do want to feel a slight movement, and then the car will kind of come backwards, and that's what we call a resting stop. So write that down. When the car pitches and comes back, we call that a resting stop. Now, roll is when your vehicle's weight shifts from one side to the other side. And the best example to give with that is that if you're coming off a highway and you're coming onto the off-ramp, if you're taking that off-ramp too fast because of the angle, and it's usually like a 3/4 half of a turn of a circle, that the car is going to lean on one side. So basically that would be a roll. So when your car leans to the right or leans to the left, that is basically roll. And then the last term is yaw. It's when the vehicle's rear tire shifts to one side. So think of the back of your vehicle lifting up on the back right hand side. The front of your vehicle is going to be digging down to the left. So it goes at a diagonal. So when there's a diagonal shift of weight, what is going to happen is that your car is going to turn on the axis of your vehicle. And a better term for you to understand axis would be the middle of your vehicle. So if you were to drive a pole right down the middle of your car, what would happen is the back end would spin. So if you've ever been in a vehicle that has lost control in the back, your car is basically in a yaw movement, and it's kind of rotating on that center axis, and it's spinning your car around. So you're digging down deep on one corner of the vehicle in the front, and you're lifting up on the opposite end in the back because of the weight distribution. And if you're making a turn, it's going to spin you around, and you'd almost do like a 360. So here's a good visual of pitching. So what I want you to write down under the word of pitch, this is what I want you to write down, is usually an inexperienced driver will have a car pitch way too much. Usually a person that is very aggressive in their driving or has road rage will be accelerating and braking very quickly. That would make the car pitch a lot, that type of behavior. When you move to a vehicle that you've never driven before, So if you've always driven your parents' vehicles, but your grandparents want you to drive, you get into their car, their brake is different, so you're hitting the brake pedal a little bit harder than normal, there's going to probably be more of a pitch. Now, if you look at the diagram or the picture, some of the terms that we had from last week, like progressive acceleration, control braking, threshold braking, trail braking, all these are listed in describing how the car can pitch to the front or pitch to the rear. So when a car pitches to the front, you can write down your notes, it's because of braking. If your car pitches to the rear, it's because of acceleration. And we didn't even get into driving a manual transmission. I'm going to tack that on to the end of a program, probably a little bit later. Okay, roll, what I want you to write down is related to the speed of your vehicle, the road design, and weather. So these three factors would be a contributing factor to your car experiencing some type of roll. And if you take a look at the yellow arrows, the car is being forced on either side. If you take a look at the picture in the middle of the red vehicle, you can see it's leaning on the right side, lifting up on the left-hand side. So the car is into a roll situation here. So it's going to push them to the end of that particular turn. So what comes into play is basically making sure that as you approach the beginning of a turn, that your speed is under control. You understand road design, and I don't know why I didn't write this down for your notes, but for road design, there are two terms that I want you to know. One is called a crowned roadway, crowned, C-R-O-W-N-E-D, crowned. And the other term I want you to write down is banked, B-A-N-K, bank. A banked roadway is higher on one side and lower on the opposite. And the reason why we have a banked roadway is we want water to drain off the road and not to pool in the middle. The same thing with a crowned roadway. A crowned roadway is going to be higher in the center of the road where the double yellow line is, and then it's going to taper off on either side down towards the white edge line of the road. So the water hits the roadway because it basically is pitching on either side. There's an angle. It's going to drain off to the side. And this is another reason why you always see potholes near the white line and not so much near the yellow line, is because the design of the road is basically made to allow water to drain, especially in the wintertime when we've got thawing. We don't want it to refreeze, so we want to get the water off the road so it doesn't do havoc on the pavement. And then the last term that I had you write down is yaw. So yaw is the same contributing factors as what we had with roll, is the speed that you're going into your turn, the road design, whether it be banked or crowned, and the weather that could affect the roadway and what you're doing with your steering. So here's the example that I gave you where the front end is pushing down and the back end is lifting up. So that is going to put your vehicle into a yaw situation. So what is happening to your vehicle? And basically, you don't want to wear out your vehicle, meaning you're driving it too hard. A lot of people like accelerating very quickly, going fast in the turns. They also like braking real quick. You got to remember is that your car is mechanical and it can break down. So you want to maintain it and utilize the equipment, but don't abuse the equipment because it will affect what your car does in performance on a turn. Now, I want you to kind of diagram what we have here. And there are three colors, green, blue, and red. So you've got a car that's going into the turn. And by the way, I do not like the position of this red car. He's too far off to the right. He should be more towards the dotted line as he's going into this turn to the left. But we'll talk about that a little bit later today. But I want you to draw these three lines. So the green line is putting you in the center of your lane. So that's where you want to go. So they call that the intended path. Then the red line is called inertia. So we could basically say that's where the law of gravity is taking you. That's science. Okay, moving a vehicle is based on physics. So the movement of your vehicle, the speed that you're coming into the turn, wants to go straight ahead. So we have to implement two forces into making a turn. One is braking and one is steering. So that's where the blue line is coming into effect. So you want to go green. Science wants to take you to the red line, but the way your car is going to end up is splitting the two, and you're going to go off the edge of the road and you're going to hit a parked car or a tree or a wall. You're going to be going where that blue arrow is. That is why new drivers are having problems, because they see the turn. They know where they want to go, but they don't realize the speed that they're coming into it, the position of their vehicle, and how much they're braking, of how the car is going to perform making that turn. So I want you to write this down. When we start driving, you'll probably hear me say this in the car. It is better to go too slow into the beginning of a turn than to come in too fast or too hot in the beginning of a turn. It's easier to get, and notice there's a term on this picture that says apex. That's the middle of your turn. Once you get beyond the middle of that turn at that apex, then it's okay to accelerate out. If you're accelerating before the middle of the turn, before the apex, you're going to the blue line. So it's better to go too slow and then accelerate at the very end of the turn than to come in too fast and try to brake and bring it back under control. I have never had a student come back to me and tell me, Mr. Toll, you know what? I went too slow into a turn and I had a crash. I have never heard a student say that. I have had students come back to me and go, Mr. Toll, I'm kind of embarrassed to say I had my first crash. Well, what happened? Well, I was kind of going home and coming around a corner and caught the edge of the road and it pulled me off to the right and I hit a tree. Well, that has a lot to do with your position and your braking for the turn. And then way over to the left, I also want you to realize, you don't have to write this down, but I want you to look at it and spend a moment thinking about it, is that your tire is made up of rubber. Rubber moves, okay? It flexes. And you have a rim that your tire is being joined to the rubber part of your tire. So when there's too much flexion or bending of that rubber, it is going to pull away from the seal from the rim. And you can see in the bottom picture where a blue line is indicating air is being forced out. So two things are happening here. One, you're losing air pressure, which isn't good for your tires because you need proper tire pressure to get good contact with the road. And then the other thing is that you're wearing your tires out prematurely. Anytime that you're putting undue stress or heat on the side of your tires where it's kind of flexing, you are wearing out your tires a lot quicker than they need to be. And you're going to be going through a lot of tires if you drive that way. So just change the way that you approach your turns and you should be much better. Okay, the next couple terms, I kind of threw these into this presentation today. The state has a curriculum that they want me to go over. I kind of consolidate some of these terms and pictures because I think for the most part, if your parents have been driving with you, I think you have the basic principle of where to position your vehicle and how to get your car moving down the road where it needs to go. But I do want to go through some of the terminology just in case you see it on your state exam, because remember we talked about the questions and when I showed you the clip of the DMV officials and they said The test isn't just the manual, it's what they've learned in driver's ed. So this is something that you need to know. So I want you to write the word down, target. And a target is a fixed object up ahead that you basically want to be driving towards. Okay, so what are you aiming for? Back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, driver's ed was telling people to look towards the hood of the vehicle and line up the crease to the center of the roadway. And your focus is too far down, only in the first 50 feet of where you're driving. But we have found that that's not the best way to get your car going to where you want to go. You want to look further up the roadway, and I want you to write this down. I want you to look 20 to 30 seconds down the road. I want you to find something in the center of your lane, and I want you to line up your steering wheel at 12 o'clock. So if the circle, just imagine where 12 o'clock is, and you're aiming that 12 o'clock position on the steering wheel to where you want to go. That is what you're aiming for. That's what you want to be going towards. So that green area in the picture is what we call a target path. So that is the position of your vehicle on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side. Now, if we were driving, and it is wet outside, I look out the window. If you were to go through a puddle and your tires pick up some of the water, your tires are going to leave an imprint from that water. You basically can take a look at that and see where your position on the roadway is. And we're going to take, in a moment, we're going to take a look at a roadway and come up with 5 different positions that you should be familiar with, and you're able to position your car in those 5 positions. So let's take a look at the top picture. It says when the car is on target, you will see the center of the steering wheel aligned with the target. So there's the 12 o'clock that I was talking about, and that's what you're aiming and shooting for. And then if your car is a little off target, you'd be going either off to the left or off to the right. And I think that's what the next picture is going to show you. So both of the pictures here, we're basically okay. We're basically where we need to be. Okay, here we've got 12 o'clock, really aiming over the yellow line in between the yellow circle and the mailbox. So if we don't do anything else to our steering right now, we just hold the steering wheel in the position that it's in right now, we will go over that yellow line before we get to the end of the road, or before we get to the turn. I guess it's not the end because I don't see a stop sign, so the road continues on. And it only takes a moment to lose good lane position. This is the problem that I find with a lot of new students, is that, yeah, you're doing fine for about 5 minutes, then all of a sudden we're hitting the white line or hitting the yellow line, and then you have to jerk the wheel because you don't realize that you're out of position. You're not where you should be. See, now the car is back on target. Vision leads your vehicle. So looking way down the road, like I said, 20, 30 seconds, it's easier to know that's where I want to go. So now I'm lining up my 12 o'clock position on my steering wheel with my target up ahead. I do want you to write this down. Accurate tracking requires you to know how to look, and that's what we're going to deal with in the next 10 minutes. We're going to have about a 20-minute, 25-minute talk about vision. Where to look, because it's very easy to lose sight of pedestrians, bicyclists, potholes, because you're so focused on one thing, you're missing something else. So remember, your vehicle is likely to travel where you're looking. I think I've got a picture here that's showing a car that's going to be going off. So right now, you're in the left lane and you want to make a right-hand turn at the traffic light. So you want to be making a right turn, but before you make a right turn, you're going to make a lane change. So I find right now, if you're looking at the truck or that green light, before you look in your rear view mirror and your side view mirror to see what's behind you and beside you, you're going to probably drift over the white line. So what I would recommend in this position, where we are right now in this picture, is I would be focusing in the center of my lane, and I would put my right signal on, look in my rear view mirror, side view mirror, see what I have for traffic, look over my shoulder to the right. If no one's in my blind spot, then I would look at the trot and I'd let my car slide to the right to make a right at the traffic light. But I wouldn't do that before I made checks in my mirrors and used my signal and checked my blind spot. Because if you're looking too early to where you want to go, you're going to lose your position on the roadway. The majority of crashes are involving people that they just have no idea what's happening up ahead. They don't see a problem, or they don't have the necessary time or space to effectively solve a problem. So what we want to do is put ourselves in a good position of time and space. How can we increase time to deal with problems, and how can I get away from a problem to the left of me or to the right of me, or the back of me? And in your notes, I want you to write this down. The only space, you have four sides to your car: front, back, left, and right. Okay, so we have four sides. The only space that you have complete control over is the front of your vehicle. You have no control over the left, the right, or the rear. And what I mean by that is that if you have a car to the right of you and you don't like being beside that car to the right, if you speed up, they can speed up and they're still to the right of you. Same thing behind you. They're tailgating you, speed up, they could speed up. So you really can't, but you have complete control over what's happening in front of you. You could slow down more than the person that's in front of you. You could speed up more gradually than the car in front of you and give yourself more distance. So it's easier to control that spacing in front of your vehicle. I want you to write down LOSPOT. I want you to know those definitions. So I'm going to give you a moment to write down line of sight, path of travel. So line of sight blocks a driver's ability to gather critical information about their intended path, or where you want to travel in that target path. Path of travel can or does prevent the driver from occupying space. So LOS and POTs always reduce the control options the driver has over his or her driving space. And that's basically what I just described. Okay, let's write down a few things. Do not write down the examples. So all I want you to write down, environment. Okay, and I want you to start to realize that when you're driving, weather, hills, curves, intersections, buildings, bridges, fences, trees, bushes, signs, billboards, anything that is blocking our vision is creating a hesitation in your action. You want to have enough time to think about something, because if it's wrong, you want to be able to correct it. Less time means less distance, which means a quick reaction. And quick reactions always probably lead to mistakes. Okay? People don't make a lot of bad mistakes when they have a lot of time to think about it, because they have a chance to change. Sometimes other vehicles can block your view. I think you know this when you're making lane changes. If you're on a highway, you just can't see what's around you. You have to either move up or move back, move left, move right to increase some of these sight lines that we have, because things are constantly changing. Other things that can create a problem in the environment with our path of travel would be traffic lights and signs, intersections, lanes. What's the condition of the road? Is it rough? Is it bumpy? All the different types of weather, and we'll be going over these a little bit later: rain, ice, snow, water, loose gravel, sand, leaves, and oil. Now, most people don't realize oil, and I'm going to mention this because we will talk about it again. But when they talk about oil, they're talking about stop lines, traffic lights, and parking spots. Most cars will probably leak some type of fluid, mostly oil. Okay, because cars tend to have a tendency to not put the, the screw on the oil pan on too tight, and it starts to leak. And it's creating a surface that if you hit it with a little bit of rain on it, on these oil spots, you're gonna travel. You're gonna kind of slide a little bit. So that's what they mean by that. Pedestrians, animals, bikes, other cycles. And make sure you know this. This is going to be a test question. You have to be back 4 seconds behind the vehicle in front of you. And I think I've mentioned that before. So every time I get a chance to mention it, I'm going to reiterate how important it is, because that is a question that I know that you're going to see again. Okay, here's the example that I gave you. They broke it into 6 sections. So they cut the car in half. So you've got the front half and then the back half. And then in each region, front and rear, they've broken it up into 3 sections. Left rear, center rear, right rear, and then left front, front center, and right front. So you're constantly thinking about, where do I need to pay attention to people in these areas? When will other people be driving around me that will cause me to move my position? Take a quick look at this picture, and I want you to try to, it's going to be really hard because the picture's not very big, but try to count how many people that you see outside of the vehicle. Okay, so I'm talking about pedestrians outside of a car. So look around the picture and try to count how many people, and I want you to put the number in the comments. I want to see how many people are counting people. Okay, I'm going to try to cough because my voice is starting to crack on me. So write in the comments how many people that you see. Okay, hopefully everybody has written a number, and it will be coming in soon. But the number of people that are outside walking around is 7. There are 7 people that you should be paying attention to now. Some are way down the road, but take a look over at the left-hand part of the picture where the white truck is. There's a person just on the edge of the frame, but there's also someone right where the door is opened up. How many people saw the person kind of stuck in the opened white door? Oh, Zach's got 5. He saw a lot. Okay, 5 for Seth. But there are 7. If you look way up the road, up near the crosswalk, there's 1 to the right near the yellow sign. Then there's 2. There's 2 that are crossing up near the crosswalk. Then there's a person in green over to the left. Okay. There's 3 on the crosswalk up near the cones. And then there's a green pedestrian on the left sidewalk, and then there are 2 people near the white truck. So there are 7. Most people have a hard time seeing those. Okay, I want you to diagram what I've got on the board. Okay, there are 5 red vehicles. And why should you know these positions? Because these are the positions that you're going to be utilizing as you drive. So the car to the far left, in the middle of his lane, I want you to make that car in a picture and put right above the car. That's your center position. That's where you're going to be driving probably about 85% of the time. 85% of the time. Then to the left of that center position, right near the yellow line, you've got a car that's, the left side of the car is just kind of on the yellow line. And then you've got a car to the right that's just close to the white line. So those 2 cars are left of center and right of center. And then the last 2 vehicles, one car is over the dotted yellow line, and then you've got a car that's over the white line. So let's kind of go back and talk about the four other positions other than center. So why would a car go left of center? He's making a left-hand turn. Write that down. If I tell you, or if your parents have you make a left-hand turn, do not make your left turn from the center position. You want to be moving towards the dotted yellow line. You don't want to be on it, okay, like the far left, but you want to be close to it, like a foot to 6 inches, because that's going to allow a car that's behind you to go right of center or far right to go around you because you're making a left-hand turn. If you stay in the center position or right of center, you're going to hold up traffic. So close to the yellow line for left-hand turn, right of center, close to the white line is making a right-hand turn. Now, you may also be in those positions because there are potholes in the road. There could be pedestrians, bicyclists, skateboarders. So you are going to be staying within your lines according to like a door opening up. Maybe somebody has a trailer that is on the yellow line and you don't want to be in the center position, so you're going to go right of center. But far left and far right are what we call emergency positions. So write that down. Anytime you cross over the white line or cross over the yellow line, you're only doing that as a last resort because something is happening that you want to get away from another moving vehicle. You want to get away from a pedestrian. Maybe it's a loose dog. But it is more of an extreme. And you're going to probably be more extreme with your acceleration, and you're going to be more extreme with your braking, meaning that you're going to steer far right with a heavy brake because there could be a drunk driver coming at you. You don't want to get hit, but if you do get hit, you want to get hit at a lower speed. So you're braking and moving way over that white line, going way over to the right. That's the reason why you're over in that position. All right, let's talk about using your eyes. So I'm going to go through 5 definitions here, so I don't want you to write anything down quite yet. But we're going to go over visual acuity, distance vision, depth perception, central vision, and peripheral vision. Now, each 5 of these types of vision, and they are different, it helps you gauge and reason and make judgment about what you're doing with driving. Okay? So let's deal with the first one, and I do want you to write this one down. Just write down visual acuity. And all I want you to write down is how well and how clear you see something. You want your objects as sharp and as clear as possible. Because anytime something is a little bit fuzzy, a little bit blurry, our mind takes an extra second or two to process what we think we saw. And that doesn't help us making quick decisions. So the sharper we see something, the quicker we can make our decision to move our car, to change our speed. And the example that I give you at the bottom here is with 20/20 vision, you can read a street sign from a distance of 180 to 225 feet or 4 or 5 seconds away. But if your vision is bad, and 20/40 vision is the bare minimum that you'll be able to pass your driving test when you go for your license, so that's with both eyes, you'd have to be closer, so 90 feet or 135 feet or 2 or 3 seconds away to read that same sign. So less distance, less time, you're going to have a quick reaction. So we want better vision to make better judgment. Okay, distance vision, what I want you to write down. If your distance vision is poor, you may not see hazards till it's too late to react safely. So we're talking about how far ahead you're able to see. So part of your eye test is, can you see things far away and can you see things close? So poor distance vision, and if you're going too fast, will increase making unreliable decisions. So your judgments will be bad and they're going to be bad results. Okay, depth perception. You can write this down. And just write down the first bullet here. You must be able to judge the relative distance of objects. Here's an example. When you look in your side view mirror, if you've got a little portion of your vehicle in your side view mirror, you should be able to see your car in relationship to what's coming on the left side of your vehicle. Or same thing to the right side. A little bit of the side of the car, and then what's happening off to the right of you. You should be able to see that. We use depth perception for passing cars, following cars, pulling out into traffic, so when you're at a stop sign, knowing where to stop at our stop line. These are all situations for depth perception. Okay, central vision is the very middle part of what you can see. So basically, when you're reading a book, when you're reading letters, you're using your central vision. And sometimes we focus too much on the center of what is happening and we're missing the bigger picture. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a test here. I want you to write down everything that you see. So I'm going to put a picture up here on the screen, and I'm going to give you about 4 seconds. I'm going to count down 4, 3, 2, 1, and then I'm going to take it off the screen, and I want you to write down what you saw. And I want you to put down at least 1 to 2 things in your comments, okay? Here we go. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so I'm going to give you a moment to write down 2 things that you saw. Okay, yeah, the image is awfully small. Hey, Zach got it right. It is a picture. They basically drew this picture of a baby. So if you take a look at the tree and how it's outlined with the ground, that is a picture of a baby. And Zach is the one that actually got that, and I'm really surprised. Now, most of you did see the obvious and what you should see out of the picture, because that's probably the first thing that your eyes gravitate towards is the body of water, the people, and the tree. But if you take a little bit closer, then you will see that there's a baby. And what this is trying to tell you is that when you're driving, you see the yellow line, you see the white line, you see the traffic light, but you don't see the pedestrian that's walking between 2 parked cars. You don't see the pothole in the road because you're looking at the yellow line and the potholes over near the white line. So sometimes we just focus our attention on what comes to our mind right off. We've got to start really circling around with where we're focusing our central vision with, to see if there's more information that we're not picking up. Okay, I want you to write down this term, inattention blindness. And all I want you to do is to write the first sentence. Okay? So the first sentence, inattention blindness is failure by a person to notice something. You don't have to write stimulus. Failure by a person to notice something that is in plain sight. So the picture of that baby was there. Hopefully, once I put it back on the screen, you started to see it. This typically happens because we are overloaded with input, with images. It is impossible to pay attention to every single input that is presented. A person's attention cannot be focused on everything. So therefore, everyone experiences inattention blindness. People can falsely believe that something is actually there. Now, there's another term called change blindness, where something is there, then it's not. Okay? So I'm going to show you a couple of video clips of how our eyes and our mind can play tricks on us. All right?
The difference between these two men seems obvious. Their faces are different, their hair is different, even their shirts are a different colour. And yet an experiment by psychologists Dan Simons and Chris Chabris at Harvard reveals that our brains actually process very little of what comes in through the eyes.
In this experiment, a subject comes up to a counter and a first experimenter hands them a consent form. As soon as they finish signing the consent form, they hand it back to the first experimenter, who then takes the consent form, ducks down behind the counter to put it away, and a different experimenter then stands up and hands the subject a packet of information and sends them into a hallway where we ask them questions about it.
This wonderful experiment uncovers an aspect of the brain's attention system known as change blindness.
Change blindness is the idea that we often miss large changes to our visual world from one view to the next. We're often not able to see large changes that would appear to be perfectly obvious to somebody who knows they're going to happen.
And incredibly, in 75% of cases, the subjects don't notice a thing.
The lady who took me up here, she opened the door for me and told me to walk over to the desk.
This form.
All right. I think there was a sign that said experiment. And a man there gave me a form to sign.
There was the guy standing under a big sign that said experiment. And to my left, there was like a pot with some dirt in it and some plastic containers. Is it the fifth?
Yes.
Oh, I filled out a form.
Okay.
Right.
This form. How long would it be about before
And I asked him how long it would take. He said about 10, 15 minutes or so.
I guess I have the time to do that.
Did you notice anything unusual at all after you signed the consent form?
I just signed it, and I didn't even pay attention to anything that was written on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
After you handed it back to him, did you notice anything unusual happen at all?
If you could just take this into the next
No,
room.
no, I probably wasn't even looking that direction. I probably turned and looked towards the clear door. I saw some people there.
Okay.
Then I turned back and looked at him for a second.
Okay. Did you notice anything unusual at all after you signed the consent form?
No. This is only going to take 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah,
Okay.
it'll be real short.
Okay.
The person who stood up was actually a different person.
Okay.
I gather you didn't notice that that was different?
No.
A different person actually stood up and handed you this form and sent you out toward me. I gather from your action you didn't notice that?
No.
Okay. Don't feel bad about that. Actually, most of the time, we find about 75% of people don't notice.
You serious?
Yeah. The person who stood up with the packet was actually a different person
Wow.
than the first person.
That is incredible.
So I gather you didn't see it then.
I didn't even catch that, no.
Okay. What's really interesting is that some people notice these changes and other people don't notice these changes.
Okay, if you could just take this.
And we really don't yet have a good idea
Take that and go into
what separates those people who don't from those people who do. It might be that there are individual differences and some people are better able to detect these sorts of changes. But it's also possible that it's just coincidence, that the people who noticed it just happened to be focusing on a feature that changed. They just happened to be paying attention to the color of the person's shirt.
Take this into the next room.
And the people who failed to notice it just happened to be paying attention to something.
Okay. You can see that they were totally surprised by having a different person that came up from behind the desk. How can you actually fool somebody like that. They looked different. They had different shirts on, things like that. Let's see that. We just saw that one. Let's see this one.
Watch this next sequence carefully. At the end, I'll ask you a question about what you've seen.
Hi, I'm Magic Singh, and today we're in Portobello Road, and I'm going to show you guys a classic in magic, using matches. And today to help me out is Mark. Mark, tell you what, place your hand up for me nice and flat. Now, I promise this won't hurt, all right? So here's the idea. Let's just light this up, and if you close onto that nice and tight, here we go. Watch this.
Keep watching.
Don't know if you felt that or not. I'll tell you what, have a look inside. Open it up. See how the match is actually returned into the book, and it's still burnt. Okay, you're not impressed. All right, it was my first trick ever. But here's the idea. Just place that back in your hand, close it tight, and turn it face down again if you can. Now we're going to use one more thing, and we're going to use a magician's best friend, playing cards. Now the idea is really simple. You're going to choose one, so take anyone you like. Perfect. Have a look for yourself. And do me a favor, show the camera as well if you can. Brilliant. And you know what? Place it back face up on the deck. Now, it doesn't matter if I see what the card is, because we're going to do something completely different. Just watch this. Here we go. I'll do it slowly. Watch the king.
Now pay attention.
I don't know if you felt that or not. Tell you what, have a look inside. Open it up.
Oh,
Check it out.
it's the King of Diamonds. It's my card.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Did you watch the trick closely? This is a famous illusion called inattention blindness. This illusion is not about the magic. While watching the routine, you may or may not have noticed the changes taking place. The question is, how many changes did you see? Was there 1? Were there 3? Or were there 5? The answer is there were 3 changes. The first change was the red hanky to a green one. The second was his shirt swapping to a t-shirt. The last was his assistant becoming a completely different person. How many did you see? So why is it that you didn't see these big changes? And the reason is that the brain receives so much information on its eyes that you can't see everything simultaneously. So instead it picks and chooses according to what it thinks is important. If you change something that it doesn't think is important, you just literally don't see it.
See, it's amazing how people can't pick up things like that. Our mind isn't built where we can pick up everything. And I want you to write down in your notes, this is the main reason for distracted driving, is we tell ourselves that we can look out the window, know where everything is, and then look down at our phone, so look away from the roadway, and believe that we're not going to miss anything when we look back up. We're still going to remember where everything was and where everything is and still be able to not hit people. And you can't drive that way. Distracted driving is a problem with change blindness. Let me show you one more.
You are about to take part in a quick experiment. Take a look at this. Okay, now, did you happen to notice anything odd? Watch again. See any changes?
Don't worry if you didn't see that it's 2 different men. It means your brain is doing exactly what it should be. It's focusing on the meaning of the scene rather than on the irrelevant details.
Imagine how much energy and brain mass it would take for us to remember every single person, place, or thing we encountered. The things that matter, a conversation with a coworker, your child's first step, would be drowned by a deluge of information. So when there are minor changes to the world around us, we often don't pick up on them. There are 2 similar phenomena at work.
Inattentional blindness is
the failure to notice something that's fully obvious right there in front of you when your attention is engaged on something or someone else. Change blindness is a failure to notice a difference between what's there right now and what was there a moment ago.
Scientists such as Daniel Simons from the University of Illinois have spent years devising experiments testing just how perceptive and unperceptive humans actually are.
So we feel like we're aware of everything, that we're taking in all of the details, and that if something important happens, we'll automatically notice it. It'll capture our attention. The reality is that we often don't notice unexpected things because we're aware of far less of our world than we think we are.
So how much or how little are we actually aware of? We decided to recreate one of Simon's most famous experiments to see for ourselves. Here's the setup.
Our senior series producer Vin poses as a lost pedestrian and asks a passerby for directions.
Excuse me, I'm looking for the skyline.
Then, we break the two up, walking through them holding a large sheet of wood. Now watch as I replace Vin. You might think people would notice the switch, but almost half the time, they didn't. Of course, that means more than half the time they did. We only tried the experiment 9 times, and by no means was it good science, but we were surprised 4 people didn't notice the switch. In Simon's original experiment, 7 out of 15 people didn't either. So what determines whether or not you can figure out the switch?
When you look at another person, you encode what's relevant for what you're doing right then, in that case, giving directions, and you don't pay attention to the details that are irrelevant, say what color their shirt is or exactly how tall they are. As long as you are able to make sense of the meaning of the scene and roughly the main categories of that person, say their height, their age, what race they are, what sex they are, as long as those important things don't change, the meaning of the scene really hasn't changed and you're not going to notice that anything's different.
Scientists have documented inattentional and change blindness since the 1970s, and while they allow you to focus your attention, this failure to see every detail can prove costly. Drivers often cause accidents because they overlook quick changes to their environments, such as pedestrians or cyclists. Faulty memories can wreak havoc during eyewitness testimony.
The goal of vision isn't to build a photograph or a complete model of the world in your mind. The goal of vision is to make sense of the meaning of the world around you. Being aware of our limitations can help us adapt and compensate for them, allowing us to do things that prevent the really negative consequences that can happen due to failures of awareness.
For example, Simons thinks that people might be willing to put away their cell phone when driving if they just understood the limits to their attention. Juries might realize that eyewitness testimony is far from ideal. And the next time you and a friend are fighting about the details of a past event, it's likely you're both wrong. Now that's something to remember.
So basically, when a police officer pulls you over for going through a red light, in your mind, you could basically still believe it was actually yellow. It all depends how long you looked at that yellow light as you were going through. And this is where a lot of people have problems, because there is a tipping point where you just don't quite remember, what was the light? Was there a person I should be slowing down for? This is where your mistakes are going to be. So if we can use our eyes better, the better off we're going to be. Okay, I want you to write down peripheral vision. With peripheral vision, you get to see at 180 degrees. So basically from your left ear to your right ear and anything to the front of you is what we call peripheral vision. Anything in the back, you're going to have to rely on your rear view mirror and your side view mirrors to give you the necessary information to process. And the nice thing that we have now on vehicles, backup cameras. So if we have backup cameras, it's almost like putting eyes in the back of your head. So you're able to see what is moving around you. It helps with depth perception in the back, how close you're getting to parked cars as you're backing into a parking spot. So what I want you to write down with peripheral vision, there are only 2 things that you really gain with peripheral vision, and that is motion and color. Okay? You get to see that something's moving and you have a rough idea what color it is, but you cannot tell detail. That is what we just had earlier in this slide presentation, is your visual acuity, your central vision. That is giving you the ability to make judgment and reasoning. but your peripheral vision is starting the process of letting you know that something's important and you're going to have to deal with it. There are 4 other types of vision that we should be familiar with, and that's color vision, night vision, glare vision, and glare recovery. So with color vision, you must be able to recognize traffic signs and signals and pavement markings from a distance. So tomorrow's class, we're going to get into stop signs and signals and pavement markings. So this will start to make a little bit more sense. Vehicle turn signals, hazard lights, backup lights, brake lights. It's important to know where these are located on a vehicle and also what color they are. So let's kind of break it down, okay? So we all know headlights are white or light colored, okay? So this one I want you to put in your notes because most people get this wrong. I always ask the question if we were sitting in class, what color are your backup lights? 80 to 90% of all my classes think your backup lights are red. They are not. Okay? Your backup lights are white. Okay? This is important. So when you're going through a downtown area and there's a car that's angle parked, like in downtown Durham, you get to see those white lights being illuminated. That's telling you they're in reverse. They're not red. Your red light in the back of the vehicle are basically 2 things. So write this down. When you turn on your headlights, you have something called tail lights. They're red. Okay? So the red lights in the back of your vehicle are called tail lights. When you step on your brake pedal, your tail lights increase intensity. The light gets brighter of your tail lights. That is telling people that you've got your brakes on. Now, your turn signals are yellow, front and back. Okay? Fog lights could be a yellow tint to the light, or they could be a white colored, but they're pinched in underneath the grill of your vehicle, not right underneath your headlights. So the location should give you some idea of what the lights are trying to communicate. And we were basically just talking about communication a little bit earlier today. So your lights definitely communicate. Now, people that have color blindness can compensate by knowing the positions of lights on vehicles and also the position of the lights on a traffic light. So we're going to cover this tomorrow, but we might as well hit it up today. What is the most important traffic light on a signal, traffic signal? It is red. It is the light that's at the top. That is the first light that you're going to see if you're following too closely behind another vehicle. Then goes yellow, then goes green. It's more important to know not to go through an intersection than to know when you are able to go. Because when the light turns green, you still should hesitate. Look for traffic, look for pedestrians, because someone else could be making the wrong move. So you don't want to enter through the intersection unless you've got a safe place to travel. But it's really more important to know when to stop and how to stop. Okay, night vision, the ability to see in low variable light. Ask your parents, ask your grandparents how they like driving at night. We find that most people, their eyes start to change in their 40s. That's basically when I started wearing glasses in my late 40s. Your eyes change, and the glare does bother you more, and you don't pick things up as well. The other thing, you can't see things as well as you can during the daytime. So always go slower driving at night. And there's a term called overdriving your headlights, which means that you're going so fast that by the time something's illuminated, you don't have a chance to slow down or stop. Let me give you an example of that. That would be the reason why more animals are killed at night than there are killed during the day is because as let's say a raccoon wanders out into the roadway at nighttime. Well, first of all, the headlight glare will probably freeze him in his tracks. So now you got an animal that is the middle of your lane or to the right of your lane, and he's frozen. Because you're going faster than the speed limit, most people are doing this on back roads, you're overdriving your headlights and you're going to hit that raccoon. Okay, so the slower you go, the more chance you are to miss that animal. And we'll talk more about animals a little bit later. Glare vision, the ability to see when there's a rapid increase of light. So that would be going from a shaded area to when you're coming around a corner, a late afternoon or early morning. I know that there was an Oyster River student, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, coming to school up near the post office, did not see a pedestrian because of glare and hit a pedestrian on a crosswalk. Never saw him. It can be that bad depending on where the sun is hitting you and at what angle. This is why you should always have sunglasses, because your sun visor may not be adequate enough to handle, okay, blocking that glare. And you don't want to take one hand off the wheel to block the sun while you drive, although you may think it's the wise thing to do. Timely communications. So write down, you should always be courteous and cooperative when you're trying to communicate with people, especially when there's confusion. Because if you're communicating at the right time with the right device, it gives you and others time to respond to what is happening, the situation that's coming up. And it does reduce anxiety and stress. And it also reduces the risk to yourself and others on the roadway. So we're always trying to make things a little bit easier for people. We don't want to make it that more complicated. Untimely or non-communications. This is the person, I want you to write this down, who's competitive. How many times have you been in a car with somebody and they try to race a friend to the store or to go home? People that are aggressive or road rage. Then you're going to find people that are just very uncooperative. They don't want to yield. They don't want to let people out in the heavy traffic. It's like, I've been waiting and I know you've been waiting, but I'm not going to let you out. That's not the way to be. There should be some cooperation and a flow to traffic. And we almost call it like a zipper, where one person goes and then someone from a side street comes out, and then the person on the main road goes, and then someone else from the side street. So it's supposed to be you alternate just to let everybody have a fair ability to get out into the flow of traffic when it's extremely heavy. It requires a reaction rather than a response, which this is of a more skilled thing for a driver. Increased stress and anxiety when people aren't communicating correctly. Why didn't he put his directional on? I could have pulled out or whatever. And also increase the risk to yourself and others on the roadway. Okay, ways that we communicate. Okay, so let's write this down, and I'm going to take it slowly. Headlights. Okay, I like having headlights on all the time because I want people to see. When something's a little bit brighter than normal, it just stands out. So that's why headlights, and usually your automatic lights should be on, what we call day running lights. So it just, when you look in your mirror, a car just pops a little bit when there's headlights on of a vehicle that's behind you. We should always signal ahead at least 5 seconds. That translates to about 100 feet in town and about 500 feet on the highway. Brake lights, do it early. And also you've got to gauge how slowly people are moving in front of you. Reverse lights we've already talked about. We know that they're white. The horn. It's amazing how many people don't use the horn. You should use that to let people, because the minute you use your horn, people are going to go to their brake pedal and they're going to turn their head. And that's what you want to accomplish. You don't want to use your hand as a sign of disgust. You want it to communicate. Hand signals, so if you're directionals are not working, you should be able to roll down your window and be able to give a hand signal to indicate to people in front and behind you that you're turning or stopping. Lane position we've already covered today. We know those 5 positions now: center, left of center, right of center, far left, far right. So we know the positions that we need to be in to do certain things. And then speed. Always go slower when you're at the top of a hill, at the beginning of a turn, or at the beginning of a curve. As we said at the beginning of today, the slower you go into the curve, the better position you're going to have, and it's easier to pick up speed as you come out. It's going to be a little bit more difficult if you come in too hot. Common errors for people: they forget. What? Why did that happen? Gonna have to pull this out, man. Well, we're almost to the end. Put it on the directions too late. Wrong information. Wrong direction. So think about this. It's better to have your brake, for directionals, it's better to have them on and not need them than need them and not have them on. I don't know why this just bounced out. Well, anyways, let me get out of this. There we go. Wow, it just made it so much smaller. Okay, for homework, we didn't get to turning today, so very much. So we're going to have to start off with that tomorrow. But read chapter 3. Just do chapter 3, and I'm going to send you some paperwork through a text message. So that's going to be your homework. What I send to you in probably about an hour or two, I've got some more involved worksheets of what we covered today and what we're going to be covering tomorrow. And I have no idea why my screen just went to like major small. So technical problems here. This is weird. All right. So have a good night. Thanks for tuning in. If you didn't send in your chapter review for 6 and 7, do that. And like I said, I'll send you out stuff for tomorrow. So turning, and then we'll get into stop signs, traffic lights, and things like that. Well, have a good night, and we'll see you tomorrow here at 4 o'clock.